to the Wild Wisdom Podcast with Dr. Patricia Mills. I'm Dr. Patricia. This podcast is for people who want to transform their health, restore their hormones, and reconnect to their body's natural wisdom. Hi, I'm Dr. Patricia. I'm a Canadian medical doctor, published author, internationally recognized researcher, and passionate advocate for your health. Here, we'll explore the intersection between ancient wisdom and cutting-edge science, distilling the essence of true health into practical steps you can take. Wild wisdom is instinctive knowledge in action. Thanks for making this part of your day. I often get asked, is there ever any kind of exercise that is not good? Or is exercise ever not good for me? And the answer to that is yes. A big, resounding yes. And I would have to explain this to you so that, because first of all, we all recognize that not enough exercise is bad for you. So I'm not even going to go there, right? We all know that. However, what I often see happening these days is that exercise by individuals who are trying their darndest to be healthy, or they're using exercise for their social activities. Like, CrossFit is a lovely community. And so they'll go there for the community, and then byproduct, a lot of exercise happens. Or you have like your spin class or your power yoga. So there's a community aspect to it, which causes us to quote unquote overdose on exercise. And there's also the chemistry of exercise where we get a lot of endorphins, like, the natural opioids in our body, the feel-good molecules in our body that are released with exercise. And in today's society, with all the modern stresses, we are looking for every single way to feel good. The problem is that exercise, the best way to explain exercise is the Goldilocks zone. Okay. For the human body, there's a zone below which is not good and above which is not good. And another way to look at it is the traditional, the ancient medical systems of Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine. For example, here's an example. Traditional Chinese medicine speaks about qi. Qi is energy, and they talk about prenatal qi, before you're born, the energy that you are predestined to have, kind of like your genetics and constitution. And then they talk about your postnatal qi, the energy that you have as a result of everything you do to build up, to have good energy stores, like how much you eat and how much you exercise, how much you sleep, how much you mentally rest and meditate and relax. And the concept of yin and yang is you don't want to have too much of something that drains your energy without the thing that rebuilds it. So exercise is an energy drain. It's an expenditure of energy. And if you're expending your energy, and with the energy, you need to use nutrients and minerals, right? You need a lot of minerals to exercise. You sweat it out, you use it up. And if you're not aware of the yin and yang of exercise, if you don't give yourself the time to rest and recover, to rebuild those energy stores, to rebuild those nutrient stores, you're going to slowly deplete yourself. And so it's not uncommon to see individuals who are engaged in like ultra racing and ultra exercising, they start to lose their juice and start to get kind of like dried out, like a little bit kind of like a dried out raisin, like they kind of start to lose their juice, so to speak. In traditional Chinese medicine, you speak about draining that postnatal qi. You're just kind of draining and draining and draining without recharging the battery. And another thing that happens is that experience is stressful for the body. It's a physical stress, and small amounts of physical stress are good. Okay. That's the concept behind like cold showers, cold dips in water, and doing like high intensity interval training, right? Where you do sudden bursts of activity, sudden exposures to cold water, like the saunas, when they go from a hot sauna to like a cold, roll in the snow and then back again. That's good. But if you're doing it consistently, like every day almost, or let's say 3 to 4 times a week, what happens is that the stress hormone cortisol has to be released with those instances. And it's like you're running from a tiger. So the hormone cortisol was primarily created for 2 things. One is for being able to get up in the morning. So enough of the ability to have the physical capacity to get up in the morning. So it rises in the morning and then dips down through the rest of the day. And it's supposed to be released during times of stress, so that like if you were in the old days, like walking around the jungle and you ran away from a tiger, you would all of a sudden have to run away very quickly. You have to pump out the stress hormones, including cortisol. There's other ones as well. And what happens is if you're consistently doing that, it's like your body's being told that you're almost like you're running away from the tiger so many days of the week. There's health issues that arise from that. You get into like a hyper cortisol state, like continuous high cortisol state with very few time to rest in between, especially if you're exercising and then going back to your typical stressful daily lifestyle. So now you have all yang. Yang in traditional Chinese medicine is like the energy, the sun, and yin is like relaxation, the grounding, the moon. So you're like exercising, stressful life, work, that kind of stuff. And you're always going into the yang and you have no yin to balance you out. You're going to end up over time depleting yourself and getting into hormonal imbalances. And there's some body language. We spoke about body language. One interesting sign of having persistent cortisol release in an individual who's like over-exercising is you would expect in a person who's exercising just enough for themselves that they would have like a really good physique and their belly would be flat and, that kind of stuff. If they're getting themselves into a hypercortisol state, they'll start to get a belly, like a bigger belly around the midline, even though they're exercising a lot. And that's because the hormonal imbalance, we're not even talking about calorie deficits here, right? Did you notice I'm not talking about calories at all? I'm speaking about hormones. So if you want to exercise for hormonal balance, this is what it would look like. For a man, it would look like, once a week doing like a really, really good intensive, sprint and like high intensity interval training. And then for the rest of the week, doing intermingling of like, doing the yin and the yang. So doing some gentle stretching exercises, yoga, like, yoga for stiff guys was a program I saw around here. And I was like, how appropriate, men really need to stretch, right? Balance activities, coordination activities, like even ping pong, is excellent for coordination. You don't think that's an exercise, but it is exercising a part of your body, like the coordination. And for women, what that looks like, especially if you're premenopausal, but even when you're menopausal, is knowing that there are cycles of the month where you have more energy than other times of the month. So, for example, we are bodies of water, right? We are 99% molecules of water. We're 70% volume, but we're 99% molecules of water. So we're bodies of water, and we cycle, especially us women, cycle according to the lunar cycles, right? And we know this because we menstruate on a monthly basis. And women most women menstruate, if they're not on an oral contraceptive pill or hormone, they will menstruate at the new moon when there's no moon in the sky. And so that's their point of lowest energy. That's their lowest hormonal levels. They dip down at that time. Their energy goes down. And then in the full moon, their energy's at the highest, that their hormones are at the highest, their energy's at the highest. These are general, explanations, but I think you get the drift. In some women, like myself, we actually have the opposite. It's called the red moon cycle. So I menstruate at the full moon and, not at the new moon. But there's ebbs and flows to our energy. And if we try to work out in a masculine way where it's the same, the same routine every week, week after week, without recognizing and honoring that our energy ebbs and flows over the month, us women get into really bad problems, because if you exercise hard during your low energy point, your low hormonal state, that will really imbalance your hormones through that cortisol hormone I spoke about. Okay, because it overly stresses the body to exercise when it actually needs to rest. So honoring that, and that's something that's really recognized in Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is that ancient Hindu medical system. And they have like a whole range of diseases that develop just from not respecting the cycles in terms of how you eat, how you sleep, how you exercise and don't exercise. In a very long time ago, in ancient cultures and more primitive cultures, or let's say more traditional cultures around the world where they're still doing their like ancient traditions, around that time of month of menstruation for women, they would actually remove themselves from the tribe or from the village and go off into the mountains or the proverbial red tent. And when I was younger, I used to think that was like they were kind of like banished into this situation against their will. But I've actually been told from individuals practicing Ayurveda, for example, that there was a time when that was voluntary and in fact self-imposed, because they knew that they didn't have the energy to do it. And so other women in the tribe would help in their chores, and these women would go off and just have 2 to 3 days of just resting at their lowest energetic point, and then they would come back into the tribe or the village and participate again. And what I started doing with the knowledge that I've acquired around this is that I actually change what I do in terms of exercise and my activities and my nutrition and all that kind of stuff, even my supplements, based on the time of the month. Like, I know when I'm menstruating, I need more magnesium, I need more rest. That's when I plan my naps. I definitely don't do any hard exercise at all. I'll do walks in the park. I'll do some gentle yoga, some meditation. So to answer that question again, is there ever such a thing as too much exercise, or can exercise ever be bad for you? Yes. And so I'm going to use this opportunity to explain a little bit. Remember, I said my dad had the ALS diagnosis. He was an Ironman, okay, which meant that he was a very, very heavy, hardcore athlete. And he loved it. He had his friends, his beautiful, wonderful friends. Like, that was his community. That was his stress release. Now, couple that with the fact that he had a proton pump inhibitor, so an acid suppressor in the stomach since the age of 16. You know that he hasn't been absorbing and assimilating his foods well, right? Because it's suppressing the acid in his stomach. He's not breaking it down properly. So he's not absorbing it properly, okay? Not to say that he was skinny, but rather that he wasn't getting in all of the nutrients that his body needed to get in, okay? And on top of that, he was exercising hard all the time. So he was depleting his energy, his energetic stores, right? Like, however you want to look at it, his nutrient energy, his actual energy stores, all that stuff. So I believe that that in a combination with a couple other things, he hit a tipping point. And actually, interesting, Lou Gehrig's disease does often happen in very physically fit individuals, right? Lou Gehrig himself was a baseball player. That's who it's named after. People who are not athletes get this condition, right? And I don't think there's ever been a study to look at the rate of proton pump inhibitors use, those kinds of medications, acid suppressing medications of the stomach in this condition. I suspect that there isn't one road to this condition. It's like all roads lead to Rome, right? There's not just one road. I'm sure there's many different ways, but that's something that, in retrospect, my quote unquote healthy dad, who was doing what he thought was healthy, this is one of the ways that he developed his condition. And I do think that overexercising had probably something to do with it. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast, Wild Wisdom with Dr. Patricia Mills. If you like this podcast, please take the time to like and subscribe, and please feel free to leave any comments and look below for the contact information if you want to connect with me directly. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, or night.
Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Just a reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast is not a substitute for a professional care doctor or other qualified medical professional. This podcast is provided with the understanding that it does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. If you are looking for help in your journey, it is important that you seek out a qualified health practitioner. If you would like to work with Dr. Patricia for her expert health transformation guidance, please email her at info@drpatriciamills.com to book a discovery call. You can also find Dr. Patricia on Instagram at Dr. Patricia Mills and Facebook at Wild Wisdom for Women with Dr. Patricia Mills, MD. For access to all of Dr. Patricia's educational videos and more amazing perks, consider becoming a Patreon member. Links are in the description of this episode. It is important to have an expert in your corner that can help you make the changes you crave, especially when it comes to your health.